is on the way. Christmas preparations are clearly begun, even here at CLC. So I thought I'd talk a little bit this morning with you about gifts. Good, better, and best gifts. And I want to think particularly with you about a story. It's a true story. But probably to this day, the most elaborate, extravagant gift I have ever given in my life. It's a gift from 40 years ago, actually. This is my parents. These are my parents, I should say, Glenn and Rita Mangum. That picture was taken a couple of weeks ago at Thanksgiving. The week before, we moved them to personal care, the personal care facility at Peter Becker Retirement Community Retirement Facility. They're doing well. They're aging fairly well. My mother in particular has some memory issues and whatnot. But they're doing pretty well, but they're now in personal care, and we are cleaning out their cottage. So they've moved from independent living to personal care, and now cleaning out the cottage is part of what reminded me of this gift 40 years ago. This is how they looked 40 years ago. It's around 1980. It is very difficult for me to look at this picture and not think, I remember them like this, but they are probably 10 years younger in that picture than I am right now. Speaking of which, this is how I looked 40 years ago. That's not the smallness of the screen. I was actually that small. I'm wearing my skinny tuxedo pants there. There's a little bit clearer picture. This is what I looked like 40 years ago. When this incident took place. Yeah, what can I say? Time has not been good to me. Here's the whole Mangum clan 40 years ago. That's all of us. And the only one married at that time was my older brother. That's actually his wife. That's my sister. Anyway, I think that was probably the day after Thanksgiving. My brother's not a professional football player, but we traditionally played a game of football on Black Friday, day after Thanksgiving. I think that's what the football is about. Anyway, back to my parents. This is them, this is they, 40 years ago. 40 years ago, they celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary. That was approximately 40 years ago. So they've passed 50th anniversary since then. But it was that 25th wedding anniversary that was the context in which I purchased and gave this extravagant gift that I'm going to tell you about in a moment. I took my first job working out of the home when I was 8 years old. I mowed lawns. At 13 years old, I became a paper boy. I think I still probably have the certificate somewhere. I was 1978 Paper Boy of the Year. That's true for the North Penn Distorter. Anyway, and then at 15 years old, I had my first real job, although Paper Boy was real job, working for Clemmer Moving and Storage, moving furniture. Later, I moved to the dispatcher's office. But anyway, that is when I first started making money outside the home. One of the things that my father did, godly Christian home, one of the things that my father did was when I started making money, he sat me down, and really he had a 3-can system. You can use this with your kids. You can use 3 envelopes. We had 3 cans. And anything you make, son, anything you bring in, first 10% goes into this can. And on the top of that can, on a piece of masking tape, it said Tivy. said tithe. That's what I thought it was for a while, tithe. But tithe. And he said, you know, this is all the Lord's money, but this money is particularly the Lord's. And the first 10% you make goes into the tithe can. The second 10% goes into this can, savings. And that was the savings can. Now he said, now son, you can put more than 10% in either can, but you're never to put less than 10% in the tithe can. That's the Lord's money. That's first fruits. You know, the first 10% goes into this can. And the savings, he says, now, you can do with that if there's something you really want. There's a bicycle or some big toy or some big thing you want. Now, I hope you'll save it for college or something really responsible, but if you need to, if there's a big extravagant expense that you want to spend on, you can go into the savings can. Eventually I had a bank account, a savings account with a real bank. But you can go in that. But you're never to raid the tithe can. And then the rest of it was in the spending can. I always put the most in that spending can. It was maximum 80%, and often maximum 80% went into that spending can. Anyway, in 1980, 1981, I'd saved up some money from those 3 lines of employment, from being from mowing lawns to delivering papers. Now, moving furniture, boy, that was where the big money was. I think I was making $6 an hour moving furniture. I remember when I got a series of raises, I remember when I was making $8 an hour and thought that was big money. If only I could get to $10 an hour, I thought. Anyway, I'd saved up some money. For my parents' 25th silver wedding anniversary, I drained my entire savings account on this. Now that's actually the response that when my parents opened that at their silver wedding anniversary party, that's the response they got. A silver tea set. Pure silver. I remember telling my wife about this because now that we're moving my parents out, I said, there's that silver tea set somewhere, and I think that's probably worth money, today. So that's pure silver. My wife said, honey, silver-plated, honey. I said, silver-plated my foot, pure sterling silver. All right, so it turns out it was silver-plated. But anyway, it was still really, really expensive. And literally cost me my life savings to that point to give this gift. Now, my day job is teaching theology. So I'm a theologian by livelihood. And the coalescence of circumstances in life have got me reflecting as we're moving my parents out to what is probably going to be their last stop in terms of living arrangement. And finding this stuff and going through this stuff, including old photos, including old papers that were very important at the time, that now were taken by the handfuls and armloads just into the trash. And I've been thinking theologically about things like this. And one thing I've reflected on is, why did I do it? Why did I drain my life savings on an extravagant, fancy gift like that? And the truth is, I don't know. It's not like me. Gift giving is not one of my love languages, typically. It's a sentimental. It was not, by the way, it was not a wise gift. More on that in a second. This is not, don't do this at home, kids, You don't want to blow your life savings on something, like this. My parents I knew, I think I was in my first year of college and I was homesick, and so my love and appreciation for my parents was at a particularly high point, and I recognized the sacrifices that they'd made for me. So that was in there. It was their silver anniversary, and honestly, it was my first silver anniversary party. I didn't know if everybody was going to show up with silver. I didn't want to be the only one. Middle kid, their child was the only one not giving them silver. I thought everyone might. So that was part of it. Now, I did not know. I knew it was an elaborate, extravagant gift. I mean, my parents were not highfalutin, high-taste, highbrow kind of people. And I thought, they had nice things, but there was nothing like a silver tea set. And I thought, I want my mother to have this. Now, it ended up having a little bit of a benefit, a downside and a little bit of a benefit that I did not anticipate. Apparently, silver needs to be cleaned regularly. It is not a very practical gift, for that matter. And after a while, it would tarnish. And it apparently takes hard work. I mean, really elbow grease to clean it. So if you have a house full of servants to clean it for you, a silver tea set is something to have. I mean, this is one of the conversations I had with my wife. Honey, do you want this tea set? I don't want that silver tea set. No way. I mean, if I want to serve tea, I'll serve it out of the porcelain tea kettle. There's no way I want that cleaning headache. And, well, my mother really didn't want it either. But my mother understood that I'd spent a lot of money for this gift for her, so she felt kind of guilty about it. So until I moved out, and it was another 4 or 5 years after I'd given this gift, this is one of the unanticipated fringe benefits of this gift. If my mother would say to me, Todd Mangum, I walked by your room yesterday and it's a pigsty. Have you cleaned your room today? For 5 years, my response could be, and often was, I don't know. Did you clean the silver? Oh, yeah. I mean, you know how much I spent on that silver set. I don't really know why I did it. Among the reasons, something like, now my parents aren't Jesus, but this is as close as I can come to relating to, why did this woman drain her life savings, this alabaster bottle of perfume? Why did she drain that on Jesus? And I didn't wash my parents' feet. I didn't cry and wipe their feet with my hair. I didn't do that. But the most I can relate to this woman who drained everything to give what she had, all she had to Jesus was this. At the time, there was no girl in the picture. I had some college bills. But they were pretty much taken care of. I'd had a scholarship, and I was still working for the moving company. So the bills that I could foresee, I could pay for with my $6, $7 an hour moving job. And I had this bank account money, and I could do it, so I did it. I would never do that again. I recognize how rash and foolish, really, sentimentalist. But I also don't regret that I did it. Among the reasons that I did it, it was someone I loved. I could do it, so I did it. Now, I can put myself on a guilt trip, and maybe you too, when I think about, now, do I love Jesus that way? When I drain everything. More on that in a second, maybe. But there are a couple of lessons from this. There are probably a bunch. Here are 2.5, maybe 3, that I've come up with so far from this gift of 40 years ago. Because when we moved my parents to personal care, some of their stuff, we're in interaction with an auction company, and they said, well, we'll take the oak furniture, we'll take the things of value, and we can sell them for you. They take a cut, and then whatever we get for it at auction. I mean, it's nothing. It's a lot of money that way, I can tell you that. But they were not able to find the silver, and they looked, and a couple people looked. So part of what we've done the last couple of weeks is do a search for the silver. Out in the garage, next to the paint, behind some jars and glasses, actually, wrapped in old newspaper, we discovered this expensive, elaborate, extravagant gift from 40 years ago. That's the condition that it was in, that it's in the garage, wrapped in newspaper. Here is the newspaper, by the way, it's wrapped in. And I blew up the date for you. That's the month before. That's the month before they moved into Peter Becker. So it's been there nearly 20 years. Here's what it looks like today. There's the whole set. The whole set. Wrapped in newspaper, tarnished, all but forgotten. One lesson. Passage we actually looked at last week. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth corrupts and rust corrodes, and even fine silver tarnishes, where thieves break in and steal. I mean, I'm glad nobody broke into the garage and stole it, but there are things that are of eternal value, but none of those things are things that can be purchased with $1 or with a check or with a credit card. There are things of eternal value, but even such things as fine silver and gold eventually lose their luster, break down, corrupt, corrode. Now, I know that. I have known that. I have taught that. Finding the silver in my parents' garage, behind the jars, beside the paint, has kind of resurfaced very poignantly this very principle. The things that you buy, the things that you work for, the things that you sacrifice for, that you can hold in your hand, are not things that will last, and in fact, in truth, after a while, they will not even matter. As you're thinking about your gift giving this season, certainly be loving and generous to the people that you love. Express and feel gratitude for sacrificial gifts that are given to you. At the same time, remember, there's nothing that you buy, no matter how expensive, There's nothing that you will receive, no matter how expensive, that is going to matter. A year from now, 10 years from now, 40 years from now. It's liable to be wrapped in newspaper in the garage behind the jars beside the paint. That's the negative lesson. There is a more positive lesson that I've also reflected on. 2,000 years ago, God himself. Now, we've heard about, Dan actually talked about during the Dad's Corner, the gift of creation. I mean, we've got gifts of God all around us. But 2,000 years ago, God drained his savings account for an extremely lavish, extravagant gift to you and me. And it's intriguing to me the way Peter puts it in 1 Peter 1, 18 to 19. In contrast to such things as corrupt, corrode, and tarnish, as silver and gold, it was not with perishable things that God redeemed you. You were not redeemed for such empty things of the way of life, empty way of life handed down to you, but with the precious blood of Christ, a lamb without blemish or defect. Now, the original reason that we give gifts at Christmas was because of this, because of the gift of God to us in the baby Jesus, who would not stay a baby, but would grow up to accomplish our atonement and redemption. The original lavish, extravagant gift was from God. In our commercialized, secularized, chintzy winter music, I tell you what, I can appreciate, going through the mall and hearing a Christmas carol, but with the secularization, never mind the commercialization of the holiday, but with the secularization, the winter holiday songs are so inane, they drive me nuts. It's like you're celebrating to celebrate. Celebrating winter. Winter has come, snow, 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 snow. That is the most inane thing to celebrate. The original impulse, impetus for gift giving was out of this solemn, profound giving of a gift by God our Father, creator of the universe, who sacrificed not with perishable things, but the imperishable blood of his own Lamb of God, his one and only Son. So positive lesson. Lesson number 2, positive lesson from, if you remember, the silver I got from my parents. As you're giving gifts, some of you have given some gifts already, I know. I was witness to at least one. But as you're giving gifts this Christmas to your spouse, to your kids, to your loved ones, to your brothers, sisters, to your family members, pause at least occasionally to remember this contrast and the original reason for why we give gifts at all. It's because the original gift was from God himself. Those are the lessons I take from a gift given 40 years ago, and that's really all I wanted to cover with you this morning. Oh, one last little thing. One last little thing. Not so little. Remember that woman that gave the alabaster bottle of perfume and just... That's the kind of imagery that Paul draws from in Romans 12. It's the drink offering kind of imagery that originally comes from Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers. That You could accompany a burnt sacrifice with a drink offering or a wave offering. But you take a bottle of fine, expensive oil and pour it out with the offering. Paul says you can accompany the sacrifice of the lamb given by God with the drink offering of your life. And the way he puts it in Romans 12 is, given how lavish is the gift of God on our behalf, God supplies the lamb. It's really only reasonable that we would accompany that with a drink offering of our own lives. Moment by moment, day by day, year by year. I'm glad I loved my parents enough 40 years ago to drain my account. I wouldn't do that again. Not sure I would do that for Linda, my wife, or my kids. Romans 12 has new meaning for me too. Drain everything in light of in light of the gift of Jesus for God Himself. I think that's actually what we're called to in Romans 12. As you give gifts, as you dig deep, sacrificial, for gifts for people you love, don't forget about this one. And now I really am done. Let's pray. Father God, we recognize that in the season of giving, the gift that you gave was not only sacrificial and extravagant, but imperishable. I pray, Father, that you might, this season, enable us to remember not only how precious is the gift that you have given, but the call